And so in today's webinar, what we're going to do is focus on helping you see the link between your ID and finding your passion and purpose. Before we get into that topic, let's just check in with each of you and see where you're at on our peak performance scale in terms of being in stride and how the week's going for you. I particularly am conscious of doing that with this group because I know people actually look forward to this piece of, you know, just assessing themselves and checking in and knowing like, okay, how am I doing this week? Am I in stride? Am I being pulled out of stride? What would be your number or your comment that represents how things are going for you? And is there something you'd like to share with the group, particularly this being the ID Masterclass, around what's happening for you that either helps your number go up or what's been happening that you can see pulls it down? Does anyone, I can see a lot of comments or numbers at least going in the chat. Thank you guys. What, is anyone, anything they'd like to share about what's going on for them that's pulling them in or out of stride? You know, you're a sitting duck, Joel, right?
I can make a comment. It's Leonie.
It's
Sorry
Leonie.
about the lack of video. So I rarely put 9. Hi. Oh, sorry, I haven't put my name up, but 7752. So higher verify. And so, you know, my 9 is because there's nothing much else I need to do or can do to be higher. So it's a sense of, yeah, is there things I can do to continually improve or whatever? Well, not so much, so I'm a 9.
Awesome. Well, so what's also interesting for the benefit of the rest of the group, what you'll find when you ask people about this, people who are a 2 in verify, 2 in improvise, for example, they're never going to want to self-promote. So people like anyone who's avoid improvise is often will put a score like their 7 or their 6 might be the equivalent of an 8 or 9 for an improviser. So an improviser will tend to rotate to the more positive view, and the avoid improvisers might rotate to the more, when I say negative view, a lower number, you know. Equally, someone who's a strong verifier, they're pretty hard on themselves. A verifier typically says, yeah, I might be critical, but I'm never more critical of anyone else than I am of myself, you know. And so I wouldn't dare give myself a 9 or a 10 because that almost denotes perfection. And I'm far from that. So an 8, you know, in fact, I'm going to make it a 7. So I even challenge myself to go even harder. I mean, so when you are talking to people and they put up a number, it is important to hear the conversation behind the number to almost sanitize the number, as it were, and get to a level where you can go, okay, our numbers all represent a very similar meaning to each other, you know, in terms of the score. So just be careful as a verifier that you do tend to mark hard, and the avoid improvisers tend to, you know, undersell what they're doing, and your score and your answer can create a really nice conversation that could be quite inspiring to other people. So just be conscious of those numbers. So 9 for you, Leonie, that's an awesome score. And I'm really thrilled for you that you're in such a lovely place.
Mm.
Anybody else?
I think the reason, well, I mean, I'm a high improviser, so I'm always, you know, lean towards the positive, but because both our son and our daughter are at home during lockdown, I'm actually really enjoying the fact that we're this like little buzzy unit, and
Right.
I'm engaging. I had a really long conversation with a friend down in Melbourne yesterday. Just stopped work for an hour and a half and chatted. So like my cup runneth over with connection. So hence why I'm feeling so happy, even though I can't leave the house.
But it's good to sort of capture that, Angela, and sort of go, okay, so if those things unexpectedly made such a difference to my energy, you know, how can I firstly do more of that? And secondly, think of the effect it then had on your day. And if the day was not just a happy day, but you found yourself being much more productive, then, you know, there's some things you can do there more intentionally. It's no different to someone going for a run and saying, well, I really enjoyed running first thing of the morning or whatever they did, you know, and do more of it, and it brightens your day right up. So good for you.
Absolutely.
Yes, Paul, on my side, I find if there's one thing really pulling me off stride, even though I've got 10 other things that are working well, that one thing can really bug me. But if I get up in the morning and find that spontaneously I'm at a good number, then that's fine. But it just takes that one thing to, you know, the old lion with the thorn in his paw, you know?
Yeah.
Don't go near him, you know?
But Doug, does it help you knowing that you're, as a strong verifier who focuses on the 5% of what's wrong more instinctively than the 95% of what's right? Does it help you to then consciously switch over and focus on the positives, or is that still really hard for you to do?
Either I'm spontaneously positive, or there's something that's bugging me and it'll pull me down. But it's, if I'm spontaneously positive, I can, like I have today, I've said an 8, that's fine. Also, I'll have if I need to, I'll have a list of things I score, you know, be they family, close family, financial, business. And there's a sort of amalgam of a score, which actually comes out as the spontaneous 8. But as I say, the thorn in the paw is not a good thing.
I get it. I get it. And Mary, your comment where you said re-engaging with ID last week made a huge difference for you. Can you know, that's sort of just getting reacquainted with yourself really, and some of the language that you use to describe it. Can you maybe share with the group, just put, you know, what was that for you? What happened for you?
Sure. As a very, very high verifier, and I remember doing, I think, an equivalent masterclass with Greg Meyer many years ago, and coming out feeling that high verifiers were much maligned people, that were just so boring and nobody liked them. Remembering about that 5% was really important. And the conversation last week about the different things of that passion means different things to different people, really helped me to start to, and I think I said to you when we chatted afterwards that for somebody, passion might be calm. And for me, finding that calm within is what I want to get to. So just reacquainting with the language, the ideas, and particularly that stop focusing on the 5% was really made a huge difference.
And it's so true. It's so true. I mean, as a verifier myself, it's so easy for that, you know, that little grain of sand type thing, when it gets in your eye, the 5% gets in your eye, it's all that you focus on, it becomes the end of the world. But when you put it back into perspective, and it is only probably even less than 5% sometimes, it changes your whole perspective. Is everything to a verifier, everything.
Yeah,
you know?
that's right.
Thanks, Mary. And Joe, what about for you as a 4? That's a big change for you. Is there anything there that you want to share? And I particularly ask you this in case we can help you with that too.
I'm just eating my breakfast. That's why I wasn't.
Okay.
I didn't want you guys to see. Yeah, look. Obviously, lockdown in Sydney. So my job as a mortgage broker has become like incredibly monotonous. Crazy regulatory oversight. It's become quite restricting. Clients that, you know, I'll present something amazing and then they'll come back asking questions, and you know, so which for an avoid verify is quite difficult to. I feel like I'm kind of, it's an affront on me as opposed to them, you know, just trying to sort of get more detail, and so what I would try to do, and I realize this job is not for me, and I've got 11 staff, so that's not a very good position to be in as a business owner, but. And out of the 11 staff, 10 are verifiers and avoid improvisers as well. So it's a difficult environment for me. But I joined I took a lot of the tips from the group here, and I joined a band rehearsal, and so I was doing singing for that, and obviously that got canned with COVID, and I'm sort of trying to get out and trying to do various things and catch up with friends on Zoom, but it's just not the same. So, you know, it's the job then becomes a lot more of you know, what I do constantly. So, yeah, it's pretty irritating for me at the moment. Totally not in stride. I was sort of reading the ID again. And yeah, there's just absolutely nothing about my job but so when what's that? Oh, So when it becomes that there's nothing else going on outside, or not much else going on outside the job, then that's all I can really think about. Amanda and I are expecting a child in November. So
Yes.
Congrats,
So,
guys. Excellent.
That's fantastic. That's great news. Congratulations to both of you.
Yeah, we're super excited, and you know, and that the opportunity for chaos and change and spontaneity, which is totally obviously I think what having a child's all about, has really got me excited, and I you know, I don't want to hang all my hopes and dreams on that. I want to make sure I'm working on other things as well, but just yeah, just at the moment it's difficult to get outside of that. You know, but then you see him kicking or something, and it's like, you kind of forget about it all. But yeah, really cool.
Is that, look at you, Amanda, you're glowing. Is this your first child together?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, that's so good. Congratulations, guys.
Yeah.
Wow. It'll be
Thank
the ID,
you.
I can see already the ID will be right in the middle of the two of you. It'll bring you together even more.
5 5 5 5. Yeah.
That's fantastic news.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone. We kept it pretty quiet. I've been meaning to tell for some time now, but I just always don't like the spotlight, as you guys know. So just kept it pretty quiet. But yeah, it's very, very exciting. Very good.
Oh, that's fantastic news. Well done. Well done. Well, I also have some ideas from just listening to you, Joel. I'll call you after, rather than take all the time here. It might take a little more time than what what's sensible in this meeting. But I just have a couple of ideas to add a little bit more variety into your week during lockdown that might help, and just help your number as well.
Awesome.
Have a chat
Thank
with
you
afterwards.
Appreciate it.
All right. Does
Oh, I
anyone
have a
else?
question.
Yes,
I have a question. Well, go on, Gail.
I have something else, and it perhaps might be of interest to Joel from what he said, because I'm a 4229 and I'm an accountant. And you may laugh, I have to do the FASIA exam on Saturday. And of course, I hadn't opened a book till yesterday. And I took 3 days off to actually read the stuff, because I thought that might be helpful. And yesterday I would have been about a 4, which for me is really out of it, because on Tuesday night at 5:30, my IT people rang and said a program we've been using has been attacked by 3 other clients, and they're taking it offline. And that's our internal communication. And I'm offline for 3 days. My PA's offline from today for 3 days. And so the whole thing was going to be chaos. So I spent the whole morning sorting out software, the office, blah, blah. Didn't touch a book. 3 o'clock, I opened a book and I thought, hell, what do I do now? I know, I'll do a trial exam. So I did a trial exam, realized I knew half of it anyway without opening a book. So I'm back to 10 today. And, but I just thought, these things, you can't control them. I had no idea that was all going to happen. Today, I will actually do some study. I will read the things I realized I didn't know. But it was just a totally, as I say, it all came in from left field. It threw me so off course, but then I somehow got myself back on track real quick. So there you go, Joel.
But for some reason, that excites me. Like when the lockdown first hit, I just got this feeling of happiness, because it was just a change. It was, and then obviously being locked down for a long time, but I was just like, it's something different, new challenge. We had a client that, you had an issue that was going to cause a massive, some massive problems for him, something that went wrong with the bank. And I got really excited. I got into solution mode. So when things like that happen, I actually get really excited. And I remember you saying, Gail, last time that you're an accountant, and I was like, how do you stay in stride and be in a role like that? And I think there are aspects of the role that you can do where you can use the improvise, and it's just that if it's, I don't know, I suppose I'd probably have to find a way to do more of that stuff and give the rest away, or I'm not sure. But.
Well, I just saw a comment, Joel. Michael, we made a comment that he's your twin and his wife is like Amanda. I'd encourage the two of you to connect with each other. There might be ideas that at times you can just share with each other, because what I've found is when you talk to someone with a very similar ID, there's just an empathy and a language and suggestions that can be like bang on, that someone else can say what they think is the same thing, but they just say it differently and it doesn't land the same way. So even though the two of you may not know each other, actually, you know, when you've got something in common like the ID and the ID amongst your relationship like that, it would make for a really interesting conversation. So I just encourage you two to maybe connect and, you know, have a talk through some of that stuff. You might get some really good value there. Greg,
Thank
you were
you.
going to say something before.
Thanks, everyone.
I noticed when I get my score, it just comes to me. I don't look for it. And then if I again go, oh, where'd that come from? I imagine my PPI is a like a stone that fell into a creek, a pond, and it spreads. And I go, how far is that? And how far back and how far many people? And I find that the bigger I let the ripples go, the more I look around and go, actually, you know, dude, you're looking pretty good. Like you're not under siege. You don't have a disease. You know, your family's good. So what is this about? And it's about a thing. And it's almost not a measure of me as much as it's a measure of what am I in now. And if it's anywhere that it's not a drama, like, I mean, I don't even know what a 5 is for me, because I wouldn't let it get that long, right? But I'm just I'm asking now for others, is when you give a number, how close in time is that, and how close to you is that? Is the number just the world you're seeing and the things that are besieging you, or can you get bigger? Does the number change if you get bigger, I guess is what I'm asking.
When you say the number, does the number change when you get bigger? Do you mean when you think of the influence you have, Greg, or what? Just explain.
Yeah, when you say where'd that number come from, what's caused, what if you think the number is happening to you, what's causing that? If you think it's you, what are you doing then? So get bigger mean looking at that as if you were looking at that number going, where'd that come from? And just how many ripples. And it's related to, I think the more narrow your look, the worse the number could be, so to speak. You know?
Right.
That makes sense?
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. Again, perspective, you know, like everything people talk about with accounting, you look at the numbers and you go, yeah, but the numbers are the numbers. I mean, you got to look at the story behind the numbers. And I think what Greg's saying is there's a number and then there's what's around and, you know, underneath the number and what the number represents for you. And it can actually be a really insightful experience to reflect on that number. And to your point, Greg, you know,
and it's related to my passion. I'm just relating it back to passion, because if my passion is going, my attention's so out there and I'm so involved that I don't even know I'm passionate. I'm in it. And when I lose it, that's when I shrink down and go, oh, where's my passion? You know? So I think there's something related to passion there.
Totally. Well, I think it'd be very hard to be passionate. We'll get into that in a second. If you're not in stride, you know, that's that. And equally, if you know your passion, if you have a passion about a particular topic and something's preventing you from being in stride, that's probably doubly frustrating, you know, because you know what's possible for you. Jose.
To Greg's point, and it's almost like saying it's not quite the opposite, but it's almost saying the opposite. To me, the number comes from not from me and not from the outside, but that interface between the two. Because where I'm going in my number is that I'm currently in a really bad stuff going on at work, and that's a great opportunity for me to shine. And I'm asking myself, because of now that I'm aware of the ID, am I taking on too much? Because it's a huge challenge. This is enormous. I'm basically taking the financial success of the corporation on my shoulders and saying, I'm going to carry you through this. We can get to the other side. But I'm also, you know, interacting with a whole bunch of other people, inspiring them to come with me, and, you know, we're going to take this on. But I'm aware that you know, there are pitfalls for having my ID. There are perceptions that, you know, may not be the best. And so I'm trying to work with that perception to get them to come along. But the fact that I'm in that space, it's that interface between the challenges that the world throws and how I'm coming to meet them that gives me that number. That's how I rate it.
Thank you. Thanks, Jose. And just before we move on, Grant, you made an interesting comment in the chat as well about the older you get, the harder you find it to deal with verifiers, avoid improvisers, which is you. So what did you mean by that?
It was a little bit tongue in cheek. It was based off Joel's comments. Funnily enough, so the team that I'm in, there's a couple of really strong verifiers, avoid improvisers. And I sit there regularly in meetings going, why can't they just move on? Why do they have to ask so many goddamn questions? Why do they need to know? And why are they looking at the risk the way they are? Like, it is driving me nuts. I went, oh, hang on, that's me.
Yeah.
So it was a little bit tongue in cheek, but it's all about living with yourself. And I find that as I get older, I find it harder living with myself.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we say that self-awareness often happens best through the interaction with others, because it's like a mirror. And when you see that in others, you think, wow, that's me, whether it's the whole idea or whether it's just one dimension, but you see what that does for people, like what the effect it has on yourself, let alone others. That's really good sort of self-feedback, to be more cognizant of that.
With Amanda, and our operations manager is 8533. I know that they're verifiers and avoid improvisers. So when I start to feel I'm being questioned, like, don't worry, they're just like that. But it's when it's customers that I find really difficult, because you put on this. Like I always feel, you talked about what makes you passionate. I'd love to be like a lead singer of a rock band or something like that. And then you sing the finale, and then at the end, the audience is like, can you sing that last song again? I just felt like that last note that you did. And that's how I feel. I've like made this presentation, and then it's like, nah, start it again. That's kind of how it is in my mind. So then it should be probably more about, me making sure I'm in stride and making sure I'm aware of those, as opposed to trying to figure out everyone else's.
Yes. That's really good. Thanks, Joel. Guys, with that, let's move into the topic today around linking ID with passion. And I thought a place to start, I'll share some of this with you. I'll show you mine, and then this might be a way to sort of branch into yours. So this is my ID. And if I think about passion and purpose linked to my ID, and bear in mind, when I started developing the ID, I didn't know my ID. And so when I look back on what was behind me doing what I did, this is what showed up for me. So let me just put this into this mode. And then if I think of it like this, and I've actually got a bigger matrix here with more on, I just am highlighting the things here relevant to me. But if I start with my strongest drive, which is the avoid authenticate drive, these are some of the things that are relevant to passion and purpose for an avoid authenticator, like the whole notion of uncovering what isn't obvious, tangible, visible out there, and getting into something that's much deeper. And then certainly connecting to the human element of thoughts, feelings, minds, hearts, souls, that type of thing, the real depth is very much, my ID, leveraging something. I remember once I figured out the 4 instincts, and then it was like, okay, I can do this like just myself, but that's going to take forever to change. I mean, I can't do that. I mean, I've got to have a way of leveraging this and putting into some sort of construct so I can multiply it, leverage it, get it out there more. So all of that was the avoid authenticate drive. Over here with the verified drive, which is my next strongest drive, principle driven is the verifiers, and complex problem solving. So the more people told me that it had never been figured out before, that just was, it wasn't so much a challenge. It was just like, well, that's no reason to stop. I mean, that just makes it more complex, and we'll figure it out. It was as simple as that to me. But the principle piece was big. I had this belief, and I've written about this, that everyone has talents, and that our purpose in life is to uncover what they are and then use them to the fullest. And I've since evolved on that definition of purpose in life for myself, let alone for others. But at the time, that was, all consuming to me, to help firstly uncover mine and make sure I was using them to the fullest, and secondly, help other people do the same. And then over here was interesting for me when I reflected on this with the improvised drive. The more I got slapped around for trying to explore instinct instead of going with the the current school of thought, which was all around, in psychology, was all around cognitive behavior therapy, the more it just didn't resonate with my experience and what I saw really happening in my real conversations with people. So it just challenged me to keep going. And the fact that when I would have these conversations, it generally left people, including myself, very uplifted and positive and inspired, and with a, a hunger to want to be more, do more, influence more. That to me was really exciting. And so in terms of both linking my passion and my purpose and my passion, I could see an absolute correlation with my ID. And then I'm like, I wonder if that's true for everyone. Everyone talks about wanting to find their passion in life and find their purpose and live more passionately and, want to make a difference. But what does that mean for everyone? And I did indeed find that as I went through life, people's, when they would ultimately explain their purpose and their passions, there was a link to their ID. It didn't mean I could always predict what it would be because of ID. Like, I can't say that someone's going to have a passion for photography, or they're going to have a passion in, being a pilot of an aircraft. But once they found that, if you then said, what is it about flying, or what is it about, animals that excites you or drives you, their explanation would always link back to something in their ID. And so hence my reason for, and what I filled out a little bit more here just to provoke the conversation today, is what you see for yourselves. And some of you might already have a sense of, and it may not be on this chart, which I we'll send this out after today, but you can help add to this and edit and evolve this chart. But it's a great little tool to help you and then help others around you maybe find their purpose and passion in life as well. So I'm really interested to just hear from some of you. We won't have a chance to hear from all of you, but those questions that I sent out last night, to just maybe reflect on, to ask you the question, can you see a link between your ID, even just the strongest drives of your ID, and what you find to be your purpose and passion in life, for those of you who feel that connection?
Hello, Paul.
Hey, Catherine.
Yeah, this is really huge for me. And since reconnecting again with the ID tribe, it all just totally makes sense, because my passion is creative. And it's not, although I love art and dance and theatre, etc., it's actually about what we create every day when we wake up. And what we create for ourselves and what we create for others. And I was very flat over the last few days around work. I had a lovely birthday on Sunday, and
happy birthday.
Thank you. Everyone's a good one, and the more the better for me. So
yeah, I'm working online here.
Yeah. It's really been, as I have drilled down last night getting your email, it's about freedom, and it's about the lack of rules. And one of my teachers many years ago used to say, so who wrote that book? And I'm conscious of it when, as a very much older lady, I sometimes just wear my hair up blowing in the breeze, and there is a book somewhere that says older women aren't supposed to have long hair. Well, I don't know who wrote it. And I want to keep challenging that, because every single one of us, and this is really my passion and purpose, every single one of us is so uniquely magnificent. Even Mike, with the same idea as me, is completely different, unique, and magnificent. And I think when we have been brought up in the zeitgeist, when we've been brought up in, well, you must fit in, you must toe the line, or you won't be able to get on with everybody, that's not true.
Yeah. Well, I actually just wrote down a piece I can add to the Avoid Complete Drive is challenging the norms. That's a big part of what drives the Avoid Completes. Yeah, that's good. Thanks, Catherine.
Yeah, so linking the passion to my high improvise, very low complete, it makes it easy for me to remember not to worry about who wrote the book and am I complying with it. Yeah, it's just, okay, let's look at liberating you. Even if you're a very low in improvise, how do you get to be that with your magnificence? Because there is only one of your magnificence in the world and you don't want to waste it. And I'm going to have to leave. I'm afraid I've got to be in Brisbane. I'm speaking at an event up there, and the title of my book is What is Success? So I'm speaking on what is success, and this is totally relevant. Thank you for the gift.
That's good. Well, have a great speech and enjoy the day. Thanks for sharing. It's been great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Catherine. So
Well, I'm happy to. Oh, sorry.
Go, Angela.
I was just happy to look at this and say, when I read your email and it said, you know, what you think about the things or people that fascinate you, how's that linked to your ID? With my strongest drive being, you know, use improvise. That last point, that influencing, inspiring, expanding people's imaginations is what I live for. Like, that's the thing. And I think of like one of my, you know, biggest, what I call a way shower. So someone who's doing, you know, paving the way in the way that I love. And that would be Brené Brown. Like her work about inspiring and expanding people's understanding and imaginations about how to, you know, be together and especially let go of shame and you know, and step into potential, and that just gobsmacks me. When I found her work, it was like, you know, without sounding too ridiculous, it was just like the most eye-opening thing, and I related it to it so entirely. And that's the thing that I try and do all the time on my website. One of the things that it talks about, optimism, positivity, and my highest strengths. And what it says on my website is borrow my belief in you until you have it for yourself. So it's like, when I can do that, I am totally in stride. And I love the way that you're describing how passion is not a thing, it's more of a feeling, you know, and like, so it's photography, but, you know, dig underneath it, dig around it, see what's the context of that makes you feel.
It's a state of being, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I loved those questions. I found that really helpful to remind me why I felt so good, even though I'm locked down, because I had that sort of conversation with that person yesterday and felt completely uplifted as a result.
That's awesome. Well done. And thank you for sharing. Can we hear from someone who's an avoid improviser? And the reason I ask this is because there's one of the things that comes up from conversations I've had with people who avoid improvise is your passion doesn't always feel like a passion, you know, because so much of the fulfillment is actually in the struggle and the toil of something that in the moment, it's very easy to feel frustrated or, you know, challenged by the struggle. But when you get to the other side of it, or at some point when you can step out of it for a little bit and you look at it and you go, but I really do love it. And if it was easy, I just wouldn't have the same attraction to it. And so it's like this juxtaposed sort of situation that you're attracted to it, but in the moment it doesn't feel like you want to be there, but then you can't resist it either. So as someone, can you maybe speak to that a little bit, those of you who might relate, or am I wrong and it's something different? I'm open. I'd just love to hear your perspectives for myself and for the rest of the group here.
Paul, that's really interesting, because that helps me understand a little bit about what I've experienced with some work in the past week. And part of that works around writing for me. So I don't think it's completely true for every aspect, but I think it is true for some of the aspects. So it's almost the love-hate relationship with something where you actually enjoy the talent, like you get lost in it and you enjoy doing it, but it is a struggle, and there's a great sense of achievement when you've done it. But there's also, for me, if I combine that with Verify, sometimes I'm quite hard on myself around, you know, did I take too long to do that? You know, and I guess the avoid improvise part of me too is I will thoroughly do this to make sure that I've covered off every base, that I've done it, you know, as well as I possibly could in some ways. So yes, there is with that. With another part of my work that is I'm quite passionate about, which is helping people hear themselves. So I do a lot of coaching. I think that it's not the struggle so much of that, but it is awareness that that is something that I guess it's always a challenge to connect with. Every person is different, so it's always a challenge. But again, I see the theme of using my expertise comes right across. So it's a theme. So whether I'm at work, whether I'm in play, if I feel I have expertise in something, if I can use that, then I'm really motivated. And the sad story is that, you know, even when I'm out on my paddleboard, here, High Verify and Authenticate, I'm out on my paddleboard, I see a learner, you know, I just have to do everything to stop myself paddling over and going, hey, if you just paddle this way, you do better. I just have to shut it down. It's terrible.
Thank you, Leonie. That's really interesting to hear your perspective.
Paul, Steve here. How are you this morning?
Really well, Steve. How are you doing?
Yeah, good. Paul, I'm a 2 on improvise, so I fit your question. So in response, the drivers for me become a sense of achievement, purpose, and creating long-term legacies, which long-term legacy coming out of the complete. It's interesting about passion. It's I don't show passion high level. I'm very even keel, which is very difficult for people to identify whether I'm annoyed with them or happy with them. I'm very, very even keel. So I fit that mold of not showing passion, but I reflect in it from, I use the word sense of urgency rather than being passionate. So I find if not a struggle, I get agitated, I do feel the frustration. So recognize that I'm very emotional and feel those. So I've learned to recognize those. So therefore, recognizing my drivers are a purpose and creating a legacy, it's that vision that keeps driving through. So rather than using passion, I'm emotional, and I understand that, and I've learned that and done some work on that area because people ask me, being that passionate, but I actually look for a sense of urgency rather than sort of someone being showing a high degree of passion. So I don't know if that helps anyone, but I'm a 2 in improvise. I'm a 7 in complete, but my verified drive with a 6, which is the principle driven purpose, is certainly the 3 areas that motivate and drive me, I suppose, at the end of the day.
So Steve, are you ever passionate without being emotional?
Oh, that's a good question. I've been passionate without being emotional. I'd rather, always, for me, I say I'm always emotional in one way or another, because events, even like just doing stuff, can trigger an emotion. So therefore, you got emotions going all the time. There's like 3,500 or something emotions. So you feel those all the time. If you tap into those, it's I suppose I haven't linked emotion and passion. I suppose I see them as nearly 2 different things.
No, it's great insight. You're making me think about it at the same time. I think it's great insight. I know there's a couple of people who've been dying to ask a question. Let's hear from them. They might shed some light on it for us. Laura, I think you've had I know she's on a call. So Amanda, what about you? I know you had something you want to share. It might well link. I'll come back to you, Steve, on this, because I think you raised a good point, but I'm curious whether the perspectives of Amanda and Laura, who I know want to share something, could be really helpful to us here.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. I was thinking about this yesterday when you sent the email, and when I look at my role in the business and what the days I love and what I do that I really love, it's all to do with process improvement and training our staff. And I really think that links with my avoid improvise, because I do want to eliminate risk, and then the verify helps me create a process that that there's no risk, there's a process, there's a way of doing things, and the complete comes in. I love when there's something going wrong and staff needs help, and I just go, right, this is a mess, okay, we can get this sorted, let's get harmony back, and we can do this. And then I just I don't know if it's a passion or it's just but I do enjoy that, anything that's got to do with process improvement training, and, you know, creating something that will eliminate things going wrong. You know, you just, why can't you have a process where things will go right? And I know things do go wrong, but can they go right 95% of the times? You know, like that's kind of what, yeah, what drives me at work, I guess.
Yeah, thank you. Laura, what about for you?
I think like all of us, avoid improvise have said, for me, when I read your email last night, I'm like, what? Well, let me start with what I do. So I'm a 1 in improvise. I'm a 7, 6, 8, 1. And so it's no surprise that I'm a bit of an auditor type thing. I'm a data steward, you know, auditor type thing, and for a high tech company. And I get tangled up in all the ugly stuff, and I persevere through it and resolve it. And people love that about me. But I actually don't tell anybody I work with, but I feel like I don't like it. It's not fun. It's not, you know, everybody else gets to do the fun stuff and they give me all the challenging, hard stuff. And it's just not fun. And when I read your questions last night, I'm like, what fascinates me? I love critters. I love little animals. I love kids. I was a teacher in my previous life. And I really enjoyed that. But I like having fun, and I don't see fun in my ID, you know? And I know that it feels really good when I complete something, and if it was difficult, you know, that makes it even better. I know that that's what I was made for and good at. It's just not fun. It's a little bit dreadful because and like you said, somebody said, perspective. You know, my perspective is I get all the hard crap and everybody else gets to do all the fun stuff. And I know that's a little bit warped in terms of perspective, but you have any thoughts on that?
I do. And it's fascinating to hear you share it from, you know, from someone who lives in that, like you're that. It's not anyone criticizing it or saying that's how you come across. That's you saying that's how it feels and who I am inside. You know, I think it's absolutely fascinating to hear it. So what I'm hearing you say is even though it doesn't feel like it's fun, you're drawn to it, all of the hard work, you're drawn to it, and you actually have a fulfillment out of doing it. But it doesn't feel like, passion is not a word that you would assign to that. You don't feel like that because it's missing the sense of fun, or what you would normally see when people are living their passion. You see a certain amount of, you know, whether it's fun or whether it's lighthearted, you know, there's a lightness about what they're doing. It seems much more enjoyable from you looking at them. Is that right?
Yeah.
Interesting. So the first thing you should know is one of the things I find fascinating about your ID, meaning the avoid improvisers, is when an avoid improvise decides it's time to have fun, look out, because avoid improvisers, the drive is about diligence, and whatever they do, they want it to be, you know, really great, you know. So when in your mind you decide it's party time, people often see a Jekyll and Hyde situation where they go like, where is that person, you know, most of the time? Like, can we have more of that? And it's not because it was a party, it's because in your mind you decided that the purpose here is to have fun and be enjoyable and, you know, party. So I'll be on the tables dancing and being the, you know, life of the party. But when you're in work mode, then it's work mode. And there tends to be this dichotomy between the two. And all that the improvisers do is link both and do both at the same time. And the funny thing is, you probably do too. You know, like when you're having a party time, you are being really diligent. You're being diligent about having fun. You know, yeah. It's just getting that different definition into your mind. So you go, okay, so when I'm in fun mode, I'm still automatically diligent. I'll just be more conscious of being in fun zone while I'm being diligent. And I would say to you, it's like a mental muscle. It might be hard at first. It might be, you know, something that you do and find you have to be very conscious about. But I know a bunch of avoid improvisers that are super fun people most of the time. In fact, so much so that when they've done their ID, I'm like, seriously, avoid improvise? Like, I would never have guessed that, because I'd sort of associated fun or their lightheartedness with being an improviser. But I think they've just come to a place where they can combine the two. And as I say, you do it when you're in fun zone, like you're diligent with the fun, you do it really well. It's just bringing that to the table when you're in work zone. That was what occurred to me listening to you.
Thanks,
but I think probably, Paul, I don't know, but for me, I kept them separate. So, you know, the work Amanda and people at work, they don't get to know that, you know, like, because at work I'm serious, I take things seriously, and you know, I can't mix party and work. So, you know, my friends and family might have a different perception than people at work, because I just, yeah, I can't combine them. You just gotta, work is work and fun is fun, you know?
Yeah. And so is it can't as in I don't want to, or it feels impossible to combine them? Because it's an interesting dimension. I mean, to an improviser, they're one and the same. I mean, you just can't work without having fun.
It could be a wrong concept. I have a view. In my mind, it's not right. It's not the right thing to have too much fun at work, because you then, you know, like for a business, a Christmas dinner, I always have to be poking Joe and saying, stop drinking, you know, it's a work Christmas, it's a work Christmas party. Like you don't want staff to see you like that or whatever. But because in my mind, I'm like, they might lose respect for you because you're not, you know, you were the work environment. Whereas if you're with family, then whatever. And it's just, I think that's the verify this, and it might be how I was brought up as well. And it's just not the right thing to do. So that's it, you know.
Oh no, there's definitely a cultural expectation out there about, you know, when you're applying yourself, when you're striving, that's work. So there is the way I was raised too was to separate work from fun. And, you know, a lot of people, as they grow into themselves, and particularly as improvisers, sort of have this sense of guilt about, so is it actually okay to be lighthearted when we're meant to be, you know, doing something that's normally serious like work? It's almost like, you know, stepping into it very carefully, because they don't get that you can do both, you know. So it might just be in your mind. I don't want to say that because it's new for me too, and I'm exploring it with you. But I think it's I'd encourage you, particularly now that you're a mum, you know, I'd encourage you to think about whether or not it's possible to have both and do it. I see people with, not so much with your ID exactly, but as avoid improvisers doing both, like having fun while they do some of the work things, the hard work that Laura was talking about, the stuff that's typically not fun, because of the people around them. I think if there's you and your standards, but sometimes when you then look at it through the lens of, to Greg's point about when you drop the rock in the pond and you see the ripple effect out on other people, have a look at the ripples and what happens out there. And I know people that will say, well, I've done really well. You know, like I've built good financial strength and security. I've achieved this, I've achieved that, but I don't have friends. And in fact, I lost my marriage and my kids don't like me. And because the relationship element is what ended up being compromised by their wonderful diligence, you know, and it's important to have balance between the two. So I would, on what I see from others, it's not my idea, but on what I see with others who are avoid improvisers, the relationship focus does tend to become something that they put more energy into as they get older, because they see maybe some areas that they lost in terms of whether it's friends, marriages, siblings, even if it's just for a period of time, like a dark time with a sibling or a parent, or even in their marriage. They may not lose their marriage entirely, but they look back on it and go, well, it wasn't a pleasant time for us because I was way more focused on the diligent side, and I didn't, which they would say, well, we had responsibilities, you know, I had a mortgage and kids to raise. And so they saw the seriousness of it. And I know people who have divorced. I'm thinking of one person in the States right now who divorced her husband because he was never serious enough. He never took our relationship and our marriage and our responsibilities seriously. I've spoken to him. He said, I was totally serious about it, but I just had a lighthearted approach to it all, you know, but I totally got the obligation of it all. So I'd encourage you to maybe just think about how you could grow both. And by you exploring it, you know, you're so valuable in this type of forum, Amanda, as you think and learn more about it, what the way you would share that for others here would be phenomenal. Like, would be game changing for other people on this call and, you know, our broader community. So for you and for Laura, I think it's a great point that you raise. And the more you learn about it yourself and maybe even make adjustments to yourself, it will help the ripples in the pond with others. Huge.
Thanks, Paul.
Okay.
Yeah, that I'll definitely keep the advice. Sorry, John.
No, I was just gonna
Paul,
just a comment. It was more just I loved the word when Amanda said the word can't. Paul just went, wait a second, hang on. It's the best.
That's true. That's
yeah,
true.
Paul, if I could just feedback on a couple of things on the, as a avoid improviser, when I decide to have a party, yes, we'll have a party and we'll enjoy ourselves and won't get distracted if the weather's poor or there's something. We're going to have a party, so let's party, irrelevant of what goes on around. So that's what goes. A couple of comments from hearing the discussion. You asked a question before. I remain passionate, yet I can be passionate but feel awful, and I can feel great depending on what's going on around. So making that distinction between passionate and the emotions. And so therefore I can feel agitated, yet it doesn't stop me from getting on with what I want to do because of the purpose and the drive and the vision. So when the lady was sharing before about she doesn't feel the fun, sometimes I don't link fun and passion for me together. The passion is the drive, it's the purpose, it's the things around it that I'm going to get the thing done, but it may not be fun, or I might choose to be fun inside that drive, but I separate the drive and the passion from the emotion. That's just my view. Hopefully that helps.
Thanks, Steve. It's so interesting because I've talked to people who are on the other side of a career. I'm just thinking of one person at the moment who was, you know, a world champion athlete, and he would look back now and say it was a real passion for him, but he probably didn't describe it that way when he was in it, you know.
Yeah.
And yet now that he is older and unable to compete at the same level, I mean, don't get me wrong, he's still realized now the fire is still burning, the passion is still there, and that's part of the challenge right now, you know. But
well, you remember the guy you're talking about, the marathon who did those in Hawaii. He said the more pain he was enduring, he knew he was going to get the better success. So his passion was the marathon, yet he expected the pain, and the more pain he got, he knew that he'd have a better outcome. So that might be what you're referring to.
You don't think of pain as passion at the time, you know what I mean? And that's why I think it's such a great thing, because I talk to people about this like every day, you know, and when I talk to avoid improvisers, it's often they can be almost not complaining, but exactly the way Laura described it before is bang on. It's like, why am I the one that gets all the hard work and all the other people get the sexy stuff, you know, but I'm left with the stuff and it's not as much fun. And then I had one guy a couple of years ago, and he halfway through the conversation stopped himself and he said, I actually love it, don't I? You know, and he just trapped himself in it. And so he was having to then more regularly remind himself that it is hard work and it isn't the sexy stuff, but that's his calling. That's his, you know, he gets the buzz out of that. And other people do appreciate it more than what you probably realize, you know, more than what they give to you. But it's all about getting the awareness and having that broader perspective.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And this is a topic that is, I mean, we could tackle this from so many angles, you know. It's such a broad, you know, people have different definitions, it lands differently for different IDs. Is that we're fast running out of time. Is there maybe one other perspective that someone's dying to share before we bring it to a close today?
I want to check what Grant just said. A surprise party for an Avoid Verify 2 would be like hitting hit by a Mack truck. How's that show? I don't get that one yet.
Avoid improvise. Avoid improvise, Greg. He corrected it.
Oh, sorry. I just read it now. Thanks.
Yeah, no, I thought the same. Well, guys, as we do,
can I guess I need Amanda's help. My wife's coming up with her 70th in the next couple of months, and my daughter and I were talking about throwing a party, and we the whole thing about the party is whether we tell her or not, and we actually I broached it because I just can't lie to her, and she just goes, "No, you're not. No, I'm not." You know, but if she forced one on her brother's 70th, she makes everyone else have a party, but she will not have one for her. She doesn't want. She said, "I don't want to be the 7 or 10." Get this line: "If you have a party for me, it's for you. It's not for me." I respect it, and I thought she's really giving me some really good clues here.
Oh my God, she is so having a party, Greg.
But that's true. That's true. Whenever when I think of having a party for myself, I'm like, oh, but I'm not gonna enjoy because I'm gonna be at the party thinking of everything that needs to go right. So unless I'm gonna be, spending a lot and having someone there managing everything so that I'm just enjoying the party, if it's not like that, then I don't want it, because I'm gonna be worried about, is this person having fun, and is that person had enough drink, and is that whereas when Joe had his party this year and he's like, oh, I'm gonna cook barbecue for everyone. I'm like, you're gonna cook barbecue on your own birthday? How are you gonna enjoy? He's like, that's how I'm gonna enjoy. I'm like, I can't. That's totally not my idea of party. So unless it's perfectly planned and she can just be there and someone's looking after things, and I'd say that someone should be a completer, and I'm gonna avoid improvise. Then don't do it.
The good thing is Amanda gave the advice on how much meat to get, so we were eating for the next 3 months. Great.
This baby's going to be so confused.
Oh,
how early can we do his ID?
We're fast getting to the end today. I do want to finish by just reminding you that next week we don't have this webinar. So we're moving now to our fortnightly or bi-weekly rhythm. So our next get together is on July 29th here in Sydney. I think that's right, isn't it? Yeah, 29th, and then the 28th in the US. And that will be when I have the live interview with Lauren. Oh my God. Lauren Lewis. I'm sorry. Yeah, I was thinking Bowen, but it's Bauman is the firm that she set up, or Bowbird, I should say. But that's going to be a lot of fun. So, and we're going to bring more around the discussion with passion and purpose into that conversation, and she'll have some really interesting perspectives to share with us as well. So, thank you for the rich conversation. It sounds like sending out a few questions ahead as some of the pre-work was helpful to people, just to sort of dial in and get focused on some things to share today. And the diversity of perspective is one of the really valuable parts of this group. Just hearing what works for one person, like Joel and Amanda, you personify this in terms of, the couple together, we're totally opposite perspectives, but how the two can work so nicely together, whether that's in a personal relationship or in a work, environment as well. It's totally possible with this level of awareness and respect for the differences, So yeah, great conversation. I'll add some of the notes that you've mentioned. I'll add them into that matrix I had up earlier, or that's up now. And I'll make sure that we send them out with the recording. I'll have them to send out with the, for you later today as well. Thanks for a great discussion today, guys. It's always fun, always something to learn. Have a great rest of day and week, and we'll see you in 2 weeks' time. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Cool.
See you guys.
Thanks, bye.
Fantastic. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye, Joe. Jose.